Kamala is teaching a masterclass on how you can handle a pushy interviewer. Believe it or not, I actually did like this interview. So we're going to go ahead and watch it together. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get to it, y'all. All right, so here we go. This was the interview with the BBC, the one over in the UK, that channel news station. I know when you say BBC, it's like be an adult.
Roller coaster story of the 107 days of your campaign, and it's a rollicking read. I've read it 3 times.
No kidding.
Yeah, because it's almost like a thriller. But it's clear you don't think losing the election was all your fault. So, Madam Vice President, you say you'd underestimated the public's dislike of a frail 81-year-old running again. Do you feel that President Biden and his team torpedoed your chances of a fair chance at winning the election?
Well, as I've written, the buck stops with me in terms of my campaign. It always did, and I take full responsibility for what I did, and that's part of why I wrote the book, is to talk about the reflections that I've had on those 107 days, what I thought were strengths, but what I also thought could have been better. And, I wrote the book for many reasons, and primarily, this election in the US was unprecedented. We had a president of the United States running for re-election and decides not to run 3.5 months before the election. The sitting vice president then takes up the mantle, running against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years, with 107 days to go. On behalf of everyone.
So, mind you, the first question was a frail 81-year-old man that shouldn't have been running for re-election. And so it already started out with like, this is where we're going. And I want to say something too, because at first the 107 days, it was pushed as like a tell-all, but really she was just telling the truth. Now, if Joe Biden is offended by Kamala sharing her truth, then that's on him. But still, she still doesn't bash Joe Biden at all.
Whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth. I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. It is important to also note that it turned out to be the closest presidential election in the 21st century in the United States. And it was important to me to write this book because it is a part of American history. And I was absolutely intent on making sure my voice would be present when history reflects those 107 days.
The reason that you ended up in that situation, and you say very clearly in the book, essentially you didn't have time. You didn't have time to make the campaign your own. You didn't have time to show the public what you could believe you could really do. And you also say President Biden pulling out should not have been a choice for an individual ego or an individual's ambition. Do you feel that you were deliberately kept in the dark about what was going on and how much he was struggling behind the scenes?
What I have written is what I believe, which is, 1, we needed more time. There's no question about that. 2, there were many factors that contributed to the outcome of that election. But being mindful of the fact that there were extraordinary people who were involved in those 107 days in building up an inordinate amount for the time that we had, enthusiasm, and dare I say joy, around the possibility for our country.
And that comes across, but the context here, I think, at this historical moment you talk about is so important because there had been months of speculation around the world, here in the UK too, even in April, long before President Biden pulled out. We asked Nancy Pelosi what was going wrong. This was a huge subject of discussion.
I want to say something about like the whole Joe Biden thing, him not dropping out or people not pushing him to drop out. Listen, you can't change it now. You can't. What do you want to do about it? Like, I feel like they still harp on like, oh, you shouldn't have told Joe Biden to run and like you should have convinced him not to. Okay, hindsight, yeah, we could have, or they, not me, but they could have. But when does a president not run for reelection? Even though I agree Joe Biden shouldn't have ran for reelection, when does a president not run for reelection? Because even with LBJ, he was basically forced out. They told him like, hey, you got health issues, you need to drop out. And also he had some unpopular things going on. So yeah, he was told, but it is always the president's decision on whether or not they are going to either run again or not. It's always their decision. It's not anybody else's. Yeah, you can influence, but you really can't. It's their decision.
And you write that President Biden didn't raise his frailty with you, and you write that you didn't really raise it with him. That's extraordinary to read in your account.
Well, let's be more precise. There is a very serious difference between capacity to be president of the United States and the capacity to run for president of the United States. And
masterclass. Let's be more precise. This is what I actually said and I was speaking to. See?
It is on that latter piece that I talk about in the book, about my concern about his ability with the level of endurance, energy that it requires, especially running against now the current president.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more.
And then they show the clip of him studying. They is shady. Just shady as hell.
Asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
So that is what I speak of in the book. And you rightly point out that I, in reflection, realize that, and I ask, was it on my behalf grace or recklessness to not raise the point with him about whether it was right for him to run? But let's be clear, my question was never about his capacity to be president.
But isn't it a strange
I also want to say, too, in her book, she talks about if she was the one to say, Joe Biden, you need to drop out, they would have automatically been like, oh, this lady is trying to take over. She wants my spot. She talked about having that pressure into, not trying to overshine him. Like his team did not want her to outshine him. Like if her light was bright, it would dim his in some way instead of them being more of a team. So she speaks to this in the book. Oh, sorry.
Message to the public to say, you know what, you need to be tougher and more able to run a political campaign than actually to be the person behind the desk in the Oval Office, to be the person making decisions in the Situation Room. So did you just not think it was that bad, or did you feel you just couldn't raise it?
I was concerned about his ability to run for re-election, given what the campaign would require, and requires of any individual, regardless of their age, and to run while being the sitting president of the United States with all of the responsibilities that requires.
There's a lot of very well-respected reporting now in the United States that uses phrases like cover-up, that talks about widespread concerns, and you yourself say in the book, it shouldn't have been a choice for an individual's ego.
I do reflect on whether I should have had a conversation with him, urging him not to run for re-election because of what that would require, and given the stakes, most importantly. Because, as you know, I predicted just about everything that has now happened since the election.
And we'll come to that.
And so my concern, and especially on reflection, is should I have actually raised it? But as I've also written, part of the issue there was that it would it have actually been an effective and productive conversation, given what would otherwise appear to be my self-interest?
You say you've reflected.
Ding, ding, ding. Just like I told you guys, remember? Yep.
Reflected on whether you wish you'd had that conversation with President Biden, urging him to pull out. In the end, it took other people's voices, and even George Clooney writing an article in a newspaper saying it was time to pull the plug. Is it your belief that you would now be president if Joe Biden had pulled out earlier?
I can't speculate about that. I do know we needed more time, that I'm sure of.
But if you needed more time, you might have won, and you might therefore be president right now if he had pulled out earlier.
That's speculation.
Well, that's the logic of what you're saying. You're saying if you'd had more time, you might have won.
I'm not going to...
Listen, Kamala is not going to throw Joe Biden under the bus. This big, oh yeah, Joe Biden was old, frail, he needed to get out. She's not going to do that. Now, she will be truthful, but she is not going to throw him under the bus. I think people are under the impression that they have like this secret beef going on. Now, do I think that there probably was tension between the two or still is? Yes. But I do feel that Kamala understands, like, if I want to run again, which we'll get to a little later, I'm not going to throw this man under the bus. I'm going to go ahead and just answer the questions as simply as I can. And one day she might need to pull that resource as a Joe Biden to be all like, hey, get some of your donors to donate to me. She's thinking the long term. Everybody else is just thinking, let me make this salacious so I can get a click and view.
Can't predict what the outcome would have been, but I am certain we needed more time, 107 days, to run for president of the United States against a former president of the United States in this political environment, with, as I also have written, the vast amount of mis and disinformation, the need to actually speak with a nation of 330 million people about not only who I am, but what I stood for in terms of the policies that I do believe actually are very salient and address the highest priorities of the American people. 107 days was clearly not enough time to do all of that.
And also, I think this is some criticism because people think, oh, you never have any criticism. Them not doing interviews right away and getting out there and getting that name recognition was also, it was just shitty. It was just shitty. That definitely should have been a priority to get her out there, get her doing interviews and getting her name out there. And I think also too, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think just focusing on the battleground states and as far as just going to those and that's it was also bad. I think that she should have really been on the ground going to each state, trying to get that name recognition because that would have helped more. If you look at states like New York, California, even though New Jersey, even though Kamala won those three states, the percentages were low. And I think if she would have been out there, instead of saying like, oh, we know we got the state, which, yeah, you're going to get California, you're going to get New Jersey, you're going to get New York. However, your presence there would have meant a lot. Trump was in California. He knew he wasn't going to win California, but he was in California. He was in New York. Remember, he was in Brooklyn. He did that rally. Like, he went to those places he knew he was going to lose. Kamala should have done the same thing, except go to states where you know you are going to win. That name recognition would have helped more.
Leaps off every page as you threw yourself into those 107 days.
Indeed, I did. And my team did too. I have an extraordinary team. In fact, I've dedicated my book to my team. From the first day I got the call from President Biden on a Sunday afternoon while I was in my sweats with a ponytail, having made pancakes and bacon and sausages for my baby nieces. Yeah. From that day and that afternoon when they all showed up, half of us had been working out and not had even a shower. And for those 107 days, they worked around the clock and left everything on the table, everything on the field.
And when it comes to your campaign, you've already said the buck stops with you.
Indeed.
You had massively successful rallies, you had a crazy number of celebrity endorsements, you had Oprah Winfrey turning out for you, you had Taylor Swift backing you. But there's little in the book about why you feel you didn't connect with ordinary voters, those people in the middle who could have gone either way. And indeed, during the campaign, Gen Z and Latinos in some numbers moved across to Trump. You stayed in your comfort zone, didn't you? That was the Democrats' problem.
I received 75 million votes from a variety of people.
But in the Electoral College, you were
I'm not
far
finished.
outdone.
I'm not finished. I received 75 million votes from people around the nation of every stripe, whether it be
I love this. She was all like, "I'm not finished. I'm not finished. Like, I'm gonna get to it. Don't worry."
geographic location, race, gender, and age. And it is true, however, and I also reflect and write on that, that for probably a decade, Democrats have been losing certain sectors of society. And there's work that we need to get done. One of the reasons that I ran on the issue of childcare, of Medicare, basically a health coverage for home health care for people, for example, who are raising young children and taking care of their parents. One of the reasons I ran on a perspective that we need to make housing more affordable. So I was offering a $25,000 down credit for first-time home buyers. I ran on an agenda that was about going after price gouging, corporations taking advantage of working people.
But why didn't it connect with working people?
Well, it did connect.
One of the things that I also want to criticize them, and not so much Kamala, but more Joe Biden. You look at Trump, even though I'm not a fan of Trump, but let's be honest, he has been campaigning since 2015. 2015, he's been campaigning, right? Then, even when he lost in 2020, he was still campaigning throughout the years and then leading until 2025. And now we're back with Trump, right? Joe Biden, I don't remember seeing him out there in 2023, 2024, when it actually mattered. Joe Biden didn't start campaigning until after he lost that debate because he figured he had it in the bag. Like, oh, ain't nobody gonna go for Trump. You know, when he got destroyed in that debate, and mind you, Trump didn't do great. It was just that Trump could actually put together two sentences. That's the only difference because he was lying his ass off, right? So when you think about it, Democrats don't think about the future. Republicans, they think about the future. Democrats, they don't. They think about Saturday, which today is Saturday.
With working people, but clearly there was more work to be done.
But why?
Because we needed more time to talk with more people, and we have to understand the context, which is that if you look at the trends that had been in play, probably at least since, if not before, 2016, you were seeing for the Democratic Party that there was a shift taking place among the demographics you have mentioned. And that's work that needs to be done, and that's work that I and others are working on to remind people that it has always been the Democratic Party that has.
That is true. It's been since 2016. The numbers have kind of swayed where you see like Black voters, Latino voters, young voters, like they're starting to vote more Republican. Not because they're more popular, but I mean, if they're doing the money, if they're getting the money out there and doing the outreach, then yeah, naturally those voters are going to go that way.
Stood for working people. And the work we need to do going forward is also, frankly, to provide the contrast, because right now we have a president in the Oval Office who is building a ballroom for his rich friends while he is depriving working people of health care during this government shutdown period.
Let's talk then about that. There's a evocative moment in the book where you realize you've lost and you say, my God, what will happen to our country?
Yeah.
And as you've mentioned, the Trump administration is pulling down the East Wing of the White House. They're turning many conventions on their head. There's a shutdown in the federal government. In the campaign, you said Donald Trump was a fascist. Do you think he's running a fascist authoritarian government?
I was asked if he was a fascist, and I said yes. And the reason is that I look at what is happening right now. And again, it is what I predicted. He said he would weaponize the Department of Justice. He has done exactly that. He has used the United States Department of Justice, which should be an independent agency that makes decisions based on fact and law and not personal vengeance of the President of the United States. But this is how he has conducted himself, so much so that recently he has dared to suggest that the United States Department of Justice, which is an agency of the people of America, funded by their tax dollars, should give him 200 and X number of $1 million because of a prosecution and an investigation that he rightly deserved. You look at what has happened in terms of how he has weaponized, for example, the federal agencies around going after political satirists who his skin is so thin, he couldn't endure criticism from a joke. And
the same stuff we complain about Russia about, it's happening here. Slowly but surely, it's happening. And I think because we're called the United States of America and not Russia, that's really the only difference. And I'm also glad that Kamala didn't backtrack on the whole fascist thing, because now, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but they're like, don't call them fascists, don't call them Nazis, don't call them this, don't name call them. But yet Republicans and MAGA can call you whatever, but you can't call them names. Get out of here with that.
Attempted to shut down an entire media organization in the process.
And you are critical of billionaires and other institutions bowing down, capitulation.
There are not all, but there are many that have capitulated since day one, who are bending the knee at the foot of a tyrant, I believe, for many reasons, including they want to be next to power, because they want to perhaps have a merger approved or avoid an investigation. And it is a crying shame that when push comes to shove, we can't count on the titans of industry to at least posture in a way that is about maintaining the guardrails around a democracy and democratic systems.
What then?
Right. Nobody is fighting back. I hate that. It's disturbing that nobody is fighting back. Like, y'all don't want to go to court. Like, I don't understand, like, why nobody is fighting him in court. Like, they're all just, here you go. Well, it is what it is.
And of foreign leaders, I just wonder, what did you feel when you heard that Keir Starmer had presented an invitation from the King to Donald Trump in the view of the world's media, in the guilt of the Oval Office? Did you think that was cheesy, or did it make you feel queasy, or was it obsequious? You know, is there a risk that foreign leaders are being played by Donald Trump because they have to show they're close to power?
I do believe that Donald Trump, as I said on the debate stage before the election, and I maintain it to be true, he has shown his very nature. In the foreign stage, he has proven over a long period of time that he invites favor and flattery. And what I said on the debate stage, like everything else I said and predicted, continues to be true.
So you would make that warning to foreign leaders to be careful what they wish for by getting too close, perhaps?
Foreign leaders will do as they think is right for their country.
And yet, Donald...
When it comes to the foreign leaders kind of smiling and cheesing with Trump, it's kind of like what you have to do. You have to play up politics when it comes to different foreign leaders and stuff like that. So it's not like they're capitulating or anything like that. You have to look out for your nation, right? And by the way, I don't know if you guys know, but the talks, you know how there's supposed to be talks with Canada about the tariffs and stuff like that? All the talks fell through. So yeah, it's still war on Canada.
Donald Trump has made progress of a sorts in the Middle East that President Biden and you, I know you worked hard on this, failed to make. Do you praise the achievements he's made in terms of seeming to move the Gaza-Israel conflict towards resolution?
Israel is still dropping bombs. That's bullshit. But here we go.
Listen, I think that, first of all, I'm very, very happy that we now have a situation where the hostages are out. There's still more work to be done. I think credit should be given where credit is due, whether it be Egypt, Qatar, or this administration and this president. There is good work that happened, but there's a whole lot more to do. And as you can see, when we're talking about, in particular, one, the fragility of the ceasefire, two, equally important, and something I've been working on since October 8th, what is the plan for the day after, which includes the security, the governance, and the rebuilding of Gaza.
Let's talk then about what's next for you and also what's changed in your life since then.
Here we go.
Donald Trump stripped you of your Secret Service protection. at a time when there had been attempts on his life. Of course, there have been other political killings in the US, most notably recently the killing of Charlie Kirk. Has Donald Trump's decision put you in danger?
I feel safe.
Why do you think he did it?
You'd have to ask him.
Well, you must have thought about it.
You have to ask him. I don't pretend to know why people do what they do on a daily basis.
In terms then of what is next for you, you write very powerfully about the differences that many women have made to your life, whether that was your meeting with Angela Merkel or the experience of growing up with your extraordinary mother or the stories of your baby nieces, Amara and Leela. When are they going to see a woman in charge in the White House?
In their lifetime, for sure.
Could it be you?
Possibly.
Have you made a decision yet?
No, I have not.
What about running again as someone else's vice president, or maybe being part of another ticket? If Gavin Newsom, your fellow Californian, said, hey, come and be my Secretary of State.
You know, I don't know if you can be somebody's VP again. Like, you know, you can only be president 2 terms, but I don't know if you could be, well, yeah, I guess you could be vice because she only had 1 term as vice president. I guess you could. But who the fuck want to do that? Like, that's stupid. You basically like, will you take second chair again and be somebody's bitch again? Like, that's the way and granted, she did not say that, but that's the way that question kind of comes off. Like, even when they were saying like she should have ran for governor, like, okay, so you want me to take the consolation prize of being a loser, so I should take the governor's seat. You either go for the top seat or you go for nothing at all. That's how I feel. Let me know in the comment section how you guys feel.
Would you consider that?
Right now, I'm focused on my book tour. And I'm glad to know that you read it 3 times.
I did. I read it 3 times because it's a great read.
Thank you.
But you say in your book, I'm not done.
That is correct. I am not done. I have lived my entire career a life of service. And it's in my bones. And there are many ways to serve. I've not decided yet what I will do in the future beyond what I am doing right now, which is meeting with many people. Obviously, right now I'm in the UK, but otherwise I've been spending a lot of time in our country. Most recently, I was spending an incredible amount of time in the South. I was in Georgia, North Carolina, and Alabama, and talking with people and mostly listening, and I'm enjoying doing that. I think that people want to be heard right now. And one of the reasons that I decided not to run for governor of California, I want to listen to people without it being transactional, without asking people for their vote, but listening to them. I think the American people have a lot to say right now.
But you've been very clear that it's a possibility you might run again to become president. And in my experience interviewing politicians, when someone says, I'm not done, it means they are thinking seriously about running. But when you look at the bookies' odds, they put you,
listen to this,
as an outsider, even behind Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I mean, is that underestimating you?
I think there are all kinds of polls that will tell you a variety of things. I've never listened to polls. If I listened to polls, I would have not run for my first office or my second office. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting here in this interview.
So your message to supporters at the end of the book was, we fought, if you fight, you win. You fought and you lost, but next time...
No, my message is, as you would have read in the last few chapters, was yes.
If you would have read in the last few chapters, like, you're pushing it, ho. Like, that's what Kamala wanted to say, but, you know, she handled it with grace. Like I said, I'm going to let it finish out.
Yes, I do believe that when you fight, you win, but sometimes the fight takes a while. That was my message.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Let's close with a couple of fun things, if I can squeeze them
Sure.
in. Because one of the things that also comes across in the book is part of maybe the showbiz side of campaigning. You obviously enjoy it, and meeting musicians and creative people and coming across...
And people who, you might, I think the challenge is you recognize the famous names, so you're speaking of them. But there were millions of people that you wouldn't recognize their name, who I met with, who gave me an incredible amount of joy, and really continue to give me a sense of confidence in who the American people are, and their optimism, and their fight, and their endurance, and their love of country.
Is Kamala still brat?
I think we're going to have to ask that beautiful artist who said it over a year ago.
Maybe we'll ask Charlie XC.
I always hated that. Oh, Kamala's brat. I think that was the stupidest thing ever. And I get that they were trying to get the Gen Z or whatever. It was dumb as hell. I hated that.
Yes.
And with that answer, she hated it too.
What do you miss most about being vice president?
I worked with wonderful people, and that was great. The work that I do because I want to solve problems, and there was good work to be had.
And what do you?
So I'm gonna go ahead and end it right there, you guys. But I wanted to go ahead and just do a live reaction with y'all because I was looking at this and I was all like, "Yo, the way that Kamala was able to handle those questions without coming off like, oh, how dare you ask me or get in defensive." It was all like, listen, I'm going to go ahead and control this interview. I know what you're trying to do, but I ain't going to let you do it. And, as far as the polling, I want to say this too. When I look at the potential, again, it's still early, the potential candidates, Kamala is actually back number one. Like, I know before the book tour, Gavin was in number one and they were looking at him. And I mean, still Gavin is number two, or it switches off depending on what polling you look at. But I didn't see nothing where she's considered an outsider. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Maybe they got different polling over in the UK, but again, they polling don't matter. And honestly, all the polls are all bullshit. They're all they're not polling actual people. I've never been called for a poll. I remember I asked y'all if y'all ever been called for a poll. Y'all said no too. It's BS. These are just whatever the person wants to, if they're trying to promote someone or they want someone to look good, they'll put out a poll. I can put out a poll and say, yeah, this is sponsored by AT2 Entertainment. This is my polling. Would it be accurate? Would it be right? No. It's just some shit I made up. But again, you guys, let me know what you guys thought about the interview. Also, shout out to the BBC. That sound. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to get out of here, y'all. I don't like saying that name at all. Love y'all. Deuces. We out.